fight fans, you're watching Octagon Control MMA. I'm Dan. Today I want to talk a little bit about Khamzat Chimaev and why I think he's massively overhyped and overrated. Right, first off, I'll just go over a few positives about him. He's beaten everyone that's put in front of him. He's 9-0, all stoppage wins, six knockout, technical knockouts, and 3 submissions. He's still quite young, 26, 6'2", 75-inch reach, very run-of-the-mill stat-wise for middleweight, welterweight division, and he has competed in both. He seems to be pushing for the welterweight title. That seems to be what he wants to do first, and the company are really behind him on that. I'm sure you've all seen the Leon Edwards fight that recently fell through, and could have had that, but that hasn't materialised. Okay, quickly we'll just talk about how he did before he got to the UFC. He went 6-0, mainly fighting in Brave Fighting Championship. It's a European-based one. I believe he had a fight or two in India as well. Okay, so he went 6-0 before he joined the UFC. His opponents had a combined record of 32-14. The names and records of his opponents will be up on the screen for you to see now. And yeah, all first and second round stoppages. He's never actually been to the first round, which again is another relatively impressive thing. Alright, now let's talk about his UFC debut. Fought John Phillips, who's 1-5 in the UFC. Yeah, great stand-up striker. He's 22 wins, 20 knockouts, 2 submissions. Never gone to a decision on a win. 20 knockouts and 22 wins, very impressive. Great stand-up striker, but as we've seen, his ground game doesn't exist. Excuse me. I might have seen most recently when he fought Jun Young Park. He fought him on the Zombie Ortega card back on Fight Island. Yeah, and exactly the same thing that Khamzat did to him, Jun Young Park did to him. Pinned him down against a fence and just battered him for the whole fight. To be fair, Jun Young Park did take him to a decision, whereas Khamzat got a first round finish. But again, it's the same thing, and John Phillips has shown there's a blueprint to beat him. You take him down and you beat him up until he gives you something. Alright, next off, Rhys McKee. This is his only fight at welterweight in the UFC. Rhys McKee hasn't won yet in the UFC, he's 0-2. He fought Alex Morono last. That was only a couple of weeks ago. That went to a decision, but a very dominant decision win for Alex Morono. I actually bet on Rhys McKee in this fight because he's English, well British, and I do try and support the British fighters. Yeah, worth mentioning, Alex Morono's moving on to fight Anthony Pettis at UFC Vegas 17 this weekend, which is probably about where Chimaev should be if he wants to compete at welterweight. Right, moving on. Gerald Murray. Now this is definitely his biggest test so far. Gerald Murray is a proper UFC fighter. He's been around for 3 or 4 years in the UFC. Big submission threat on the ground. I think he's got over 20 submission wins in his career. He's 6-6 in the UFC though, so 50-50 fight. 50-50 fight as far as the UFC is concerned. The Ron win was probably his best win. He has got a couple. Thiago Santos beat him. Kevin Holland beat him a couple of years ago. So not a terrible fighter. He's, like I say, 6-6. But he went into the Khamzat fight coming off a first round knockout loss to Ian Heinisch. And from the look of it, well, everyone saw that fight. It's 20 seconds long, but he didn't look like he wanted to be there. I think the pressure got to him, the hype surrounding Chimaev. I think he had a chip on his shoulder when he saw the odds come out. I think he went into at a plus 400, whereas Chimaev went in at minus 300, despite only having 1 win at middleweight. And yeah, I just think Meerschaert didn't show up on that day, and I hope we see him again because he's a likeable guy, honest, puts his yards in, and that's that. Right, so just a quick word on who I think Chimaev reasonably should fight. He had the fight booked against Leon Edwards, that's fallen through. Kevin Holland's called him out on Saturday, But as has become a bit of a thing with Chimaev, he chooses to ignore the call-outs and acts like no one wants to fight him. Prime example of that's Neil Magny. As far as I'm aware, Neil Magny's been calling him out since September after he beat Meerschaert. Neil Magny is, I believe he's ranked 8 at welterweight. He's been around a long time, very good fighter. Had a year or two off recently due to injury, but he's on the up and up. He's recently beaten Robbie Lawler, so he's definitely back on track. And everyone acts like he's not called out Chimaev, which annoys me. Chael Sonnen, I love his show, it's great, but he's the biggest proponent of that, acting like no one's called out Chimaev. Neil Magny's called him out several times. Chimaev's ignored it. Everyone else seems to just let it go that he's ignored him. And then there's Kevin Holland on Saturday. He's just, again, ignored that call out. He acts like he'll fight on short notice. That's his whole gimmick. He fought twice in 10 days. Fought twice in 10 days against two guys with a combined record of 1-7 in the UFC. So let's not act like that's the most impressive thing ever, because yes, it is admirable, and especially that he made the lesser weight on the second fight, but it's not as impressive as it sounds on the face of it. He then fought again 2 months later in September, and now it's been 3 months since he fought. So let's not act like he's the most active fighter in the world. He's got 3 UFC wins this year. There's over 100 UFC fighters who have fought 3 times this year, and probably as 30 or 40 that have won 3 times this year. Alright, so who reasonably should he fight, in my opinion? Leon Edwards, no. I try and like Leon Edwards again because he's English, and he was meant to fight Gilbert Burns back before the pandemic hit. Then he got offered a Kamaru Usman fight on a week's notice. I can sort of understand him not taking that one, but he really turned me off when he turned out Wonderboy, acting like it wouldn't do anything for his ranking. Well, by that basis, why should Gilbert Burns fight him? Because it doesn't do any good for his ranking. I'm not a big fan of the way fighters use the rankings to avoid fights. So I know it's meant to be about Khamzat, that's one thing that does annoy me. So realistically, if Khamzat wants to fight at welterweight, I think he should be in there with someone like Belal Muhammad, who's just about pushing the top 15 at the minute. He's fighting Diego Lima at the weekend. Obviously, you can't fight Khamzat at the minute, but by the look at it, Khamzat's in no rush to fight. Robbie Lawler, again, Robbie Lawler is sort of on his way out, so I think that's something Khamzat would probably win, but it'd put a big name on his record, and it'd probably help him out, like, with the hardcore fans as well. Gunnar Nelson's another name, not fought for a while, but still, he's got a bit of name recognition. Last one, Cowboy Oliveira, however you say it. I wouldn't mind him fighting him either. But the main point is that Chimaev's not all he's cracked up to be, and I think when he does fight someone in the top 10, I think he'll be shown up for. Don't get me wrong, he might win, but he won't win in the dominant fashion that he has been doing. And against Leon Edwards, I put a fair amount of money on Leon Edwards, because he is a proper fighter, massive UFC experience, and I think he would have handily beaten Chimaev. Right, that'll wrap us up for today. I just may have been a little bit of a rant, may have gone off on a few tangents, but I'm not a massive fan of Chimaev. That may change in the future if he puts together some notable wins, but I mean, for now, fight someone a bit lower down, someone pushing the top 15 of either welterweight or middleweight, then get yourself a guy in the top between 5 and 15, then your number one contender fight, then fight for the title, then there's the hype sorted, no more questions to be answered, undisputed champ if that's where you can go. Alright, so I'll call it a day on that one. Later on today I'm going to start off my series on UFC Vegas 17, That's this weekend's fight card. I'm going to start off talking about Jose Aldo versus Chito Vera. I think that's going to be one of the more interesting fights on the card. I'll be doing a breakdown of that. And then I'll probably do 2 fights a day for the rest of the week. And then a big roundup on Saturday. Right, fight fans, you've been watching Octagon Control MMA. I've been Dan. Hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.